But realistically, the odds are against it. Konami is a business, and from what I can tell with Metal Gear Solid 4, the investment might not be worth it for them. However, I could be completely wrong, and Konami might surprise us. It all depends on whether they are willing to invest in winning back fans and rebuilding trust, whatever it takes. It is a tough road, and if they decided to step back, I wouldn't blame them. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day. Well, that aged like a rotten milk, isn't it? So, Metal Gear Solid 4 is finally coming to modern consoles. And before we go any further, I need to make one thing very clear. This video is not a reaction to the Master Collection Volume 2 announcement. To be honest, I've been planning a follow-up to my 2024 video for a long time now. Ever since I made that video, I already knew I wanted to revisit this topic. But back then, my understanding of the biggest technical issue behind Metal Gear Solid 4 was very limited. All I really knew was this: the PlayStation 3's cell architecture wasn't bad, but it was notoriously difficult to work with. Even Gabe Newell once described it as a waste of everybody's time. And that difficulty wasn't just a Metal Gear problem. It was one of the main reasons Japanese game development struggled during the PS3 generation. Even big companies like Square Enix and Capcom had trouble adapting to it at first. It took them years to really understand the hardware, and by the time they did, they were releasing their best PS3 games late in the console's life cycle. So instead of rushing out a follow-up video, I decided to wait. During that time, I learned more about how the cell architecture actually works. I learned why Metal Gear Solid 4 was built the way it was, and once I understood that, I realized something. This story only makes sense once we know whether Konami actually went through with it. So when rumors about Master Collection Volume 2 start circulating back in September 2025, I decided to wait even longer, until we got official confirmation. And now that we finally have it, we can talk about what this really means. Because Metal Gear Solid 4 on modern hardware is not impressive because it exists, it is impressive because it shouldn't. And the fact that it does tell us a lot about what had to change behind the scenes and about who Konami is now. When I made my original video, I wasn't trying to predict the future. I wasn't saying Metal Gear Solid 4 will never be re-released. It was meant to explain why it looked impossible and what it would take to make this happen. Because MGS4 wasn't just hard to port, it was hard to justify porting. And the answer was technical pain, legal pain, financial pain, and business risk. Metal Gear Solid 4 was built deeply around the PlayStation 3's cell architecture. It used a custom engine designed specifically for that hardware. It is packed with licensed content, and it is a more divisive entry than Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, or 3. So my argument back then was simple. Not, it is impossible, but it will only happen if Konami decide it is worth suffering for. That is exactly what makes this announcement interesting. Let's recap the obstacles. Metal Gear Solid 4 wasn't just another game to port. It was designed around one of the most complicated consoles ever made, the PlayStation 3. Unlike Metal Gear Solid 2 or 3, which had Xbox 360 versions that could later be reused for modern ports, MGS4 had no safety net. Its engine, memory management, and performance quirks were all deeply intertwined with the PS3's cell processor. It used one main CPU and several specialized cores that are called SPUs, a radical design that promised incredible performance but required developers to rethink everything. AI systems, memory usage, physics. Every system in MGS4 assumed the cell was doing a very specific jobs at very specific times. And that's why MGS4 didn't just lack a port, it lacked a path forward. Porting it wasn't like moving a PS2 game to HD. It was like translating a language modern hardware doesn't speak anymore. And this isn't unique to MGS4. Many PS3 exclusives quietly stayed behind, not because developers didn't care, but because undoing these design choices meant rewriting games at their deepest level. Some people might say, why don't you just emulate it? I could emulate it on my PC just fine. Because emulation is not preservation. PlayStation 3 emulation is one of the most demanding types of emulation that exists. It requires powerful CPUs, constant per-game fixes, and educated guesses about how the original hardware behaved. And Metal Gear Solid 4 is one of the hardest PS3 games to emulate. It uses memory in strange ways. It pushes the system in an unusual directions. It was never designed to be interpreted by another machine. So even when it runs, it often runs with visual bugs, timing issues, or unstable performance, which means it is playable, but not preserved. Unofficial port means future players can experience the game without hacks, without configuration, and without fragile fan tools. Then there's licensing. Inside MGS4, you have Apple products, Sony hardware, Playboy magazines, real-world brands, and other licensed elements, which means either you renegotiate contracts, replace assets, remove content, or redesign entire scenes. All of it costs time, all of it costs money. None of it is glamorous. And finally comes the business question. Is it worth it? MGS4 is important, but it isn't as universally loved as MGS1, 2, or 3. MGS4 was trapped by its era, by its hardware, its architecture, and the choices made to make it shine. From a business perspective, this is the riskiest Metal Gear game to rescue. For a long time, Konami avoided that risk. Until now. And that's exactly why what Konami did here is so remarkable. Here's the key idea of this video. MGS4 on modern hardware is not impressive because it exists. It is impressive because it shouldn't. It is impressive because it required effort instead of shortcuts. If this was easy, it would have happened in 2015. If it was cheap, it would have been in Volume 1. If it was simple, it wouldn't be news. The fact that it took this long means something changed inside Konami. They looked at the hardest Metal Gear game to preserve and decided, we are doing that one too. Not because it was safe, not because it was convenient, but because leaving it behind made the series incomplete. That's not a cash grab decision. That's a reputation decision. And here's where my old argument is supported by reality. Look at Volume 1. It had Metal Gear, Metal Gear 2, Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, and the 2 NES games. That's 7 games, plus bonus content. Volume 2, 3 games. That alone tells you something. It means Metal Gear Solid 4 absorbed the budget. The collection is smaller because the hardest game demanded the most work. So when people say, see, you were wrong. No. What I was saying was, this game is expensive to save, and Volume 2 being smaller proves it. And let me be absolutely very clear. This is not a review of Metal Gear Solid 4. I still believe it is not as strong as Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, or 3. It's more divisive, it is heavier on cutscenes, its pacing is more uneven. But none of that matters here. What matters is this. It is the hardest Metal Gear game to preserve, and Konami chose to preserve it anyway. That's the story. Back in 2015, Konami's reputation collapsed. They abandoned game development, they fired Kojima, they leaned into pachinko and mobile games, they burned trust with fans. For years, Konami was a punchline. But what we're seeing now is different. Rescuing Metal Gear Solid 4 is not just about Metal Gear. It's about saying, we are willing to deal with our past instead of running from it. And it is not happening in isolation. At the State of Play presentation, we also saw a new Castlevania project, an extended look at Silent Hill Townfall, and a brand new IP called Rev Noir. This doesn't look like a company testing the waters. It looks like a company rebuilding its identity. This feels similar to what happened with Capcom, a company that went from being mocked to being trusted again. And rescuing Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots is the hardest way Konami could prove they are serious. If this was about money, Konami would have skipped MGS4. They would have chosen easier projects, they would have avoided the licensing nightmare. They would have left the hardest game behind. Instead, they chose the game that caused the most pain. Which means, this wasn't a profit-first move, it was a trust-first move. It was about telling fans, we are not pretending this game doesn't exist anymore. And that's what makes this different from a normal remaster. It is a legacy repair. So no, Metal Gear Solid 4 coming to modern hardware does not mean my old video was wrong. It means the conditions finally changed. It means Konami accepted the technical challenge, the legal work, and the financial risk instead of avoiding them. And that's the real story here. Not that MGS4 got ported, but that Konami decided it was worth the struggle. The company that walked away from console games in 2015 is not the same company we are seeing now. This is a Konami willing to confront its own history instead of hiding from it. And the fact that Metal Gear Solid 4 is finally playable on modern hardware is a proof of that. Now all that's left is hoping that Master Collection Volume 2 releases without issues, unlike Volume 1. And given the amount of work required to port MGS4, I will definitely be crossing my fingers. But honestly, given the monumental task Konami took on just to bring this game to modern hardware for the sake of winning back the fans, I think it's fair to say we can forgive them for all the misstep they have done since 2015. Especially when you remember this. None of the executives who were responsible for Konami's collapse back then are still with the company. The people who made those decisions are gone. This is a different leadership, a different direction, and clearly a different set of priorities. So this isn't about excusing the past, it's about recognizing that the company has changed. They didn't take the easy route, they took the hardest one. And if that's not a redemption story, I don't know what is. Konami is back. Now I want to turn this question to you, the viewer. In my opinion, Konami has redeemed themselves. They have won me back. But what about you? Do you forgive Konami? Have they won you back too? Or are you still angry about what happened? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.